What's going on, folks? It is February in Texas, and this is the first day we've had that's just been sunny and warm and beautiful. Deer season ended a couple weeks ago, and postseason is a great time to get out and scout, to look at properties after season and try to figure out where the deer went. Preseason is a good time to scout to figure out where they're going to be at the start of the season, but then after deer start getting pressure, you really need to look postseason to see where they go when they get pushed, where they go when they get pressured. So that's why postseason is a good time to scout. This is a property that I've never been on before. I've driven by it many times. I'm on some public land that's really checkerboarded, and some of those parcels get hit with a whole lot of hunters, and some of them people just kind of drive by. So this is one of those properties that doesn't have a parking lot, doesn't have easy access. There's no real clear-cut trails. There is one just like logging road on the perimeter. But aside from that, it's pretty hard to access, so I wanted to just check it out, spend some time out here scouting it. I've never been out here. I'm of course not going to tell you exactly where I am, but I think this is a good chance to look at a new property and kind of explain what I'm looking for, what I'm finding, and what my process looks like when scouting a totally new place in postseason. So take a little walk, see what we find. And yeah, I've got my shotgun with me just in case I get on some wild pigs or something. Probably won't, but you never know. So we'll take a little walk, see what we can find. So I got into this property, and I'm not even too far in. I just walked down that logging road that I mentioned, and I identified this big oak flat behind me. I'm gonna spend some time combing that, but the very first thing I identified is that there's this big field here and this oak flat. Out here in North Texas, deer like to bed in this stuff out in the open, especially at night or in the evenings, but they love this sort of stuff too, all these post oaks, all that. But pretty much anywhere in the whitetail deer's range, anywhere there are deer, you can pretty much guarantee that you can walk on the edge of a wood line in an open field and almost always find a deer trail, usually where they're moving at night and in the morning. So that's the very first thing I'm looking for. And sure enough, I started walking here. I've just been here just a couple minutes and I found a trail already. So it's not a super heavy trail, but it's obviously a deer trail. And the very first little sapling I looked at, check this out. The very first small tree I looked at has an old rub on it. Now, this may have been from October and it's February now, or it may have even been last year. But it's kind of hard to tell with, you know, it being several months out from when deer are starting to make these rubs. But the point is, find a trail like this and you can very, very quickly start to identify the deer movement in an area. So I'm gonna follow this trail, just kind of see where other trails fork off to, and then I'm gonna start going into this hardwood area, see if I can find some creek bottom, see if I can find some acorns, stuff like that. But already, just some things to look for, and it's looking good on this property. Now I kept following that trail, and it looks like this wooded area kind of loops around, so I'm just gonna keep following it. But I'm already finding some good deer tracks. Again, I've just been here 5 minutes maybe, but there's this little drainage area, and so anytime you see something like this, deer are gonna be coming out of here because it's a good low hiding spot, but it's especially a good place to look for tracks just because the soil is gonna be moist and it's easier to find tracks basically. So I started looking around here on that trail, and then check this out. So there is a little bit of debate on identifying buck tracks versus doe tracks. Some people say look at the size of them, some people say look for dew claws, and I think the dew claw thing generally is true. Not always, but generally bucks are more likely to leave dew claw marks just because they're bigger and heavier. And that's why I think if you look at these tracks, you can see a set of tracks going one way and then a set of tracks going the other way, and one is way bigger than the other one, and one has dew claws and one doesn't. So I think we're seeing both does and bucks on this same trail. So I kept going down that trail. I probably only went about 100 yards since I was last talking, but look what I just found. That's definitely a jawbone of a whitetail. So you see that and you're like, okay, so a deer died somewhere here. Is that good? Is that bad? Well, this looks like a young deer by the size of it. I'm not looking at the teeth or trying to get age. It just looks small. So that means that that was a deer that was probably local to here. That's not some cruising buck or a deer that got hit by a car. That means there are deer that live here. So finding stuff like that, bones, is good, especially because when a deer is wounded, a lot of times they're gonna immediately run to where they feel safe, where they feel cover. So that means this isn't generally an area where they feel safe, because a deer was probably wounded and laid down here and died. Or a coyote, you know, found a deer that was bedded in here at some time. But finding deer bones is actually always a good sign, unless you find just a whole pile and you know that's where somebody's dragging carcasses or something like that. But if you find just something like that, just a single deer jaw, that's a good sign. So I kept walking down that same trail and I found another bit of sign, but this time it's not so good because it's human sign. It's a trash can turned upside down. Now likely, my guess, I don't know this for sure, maybe somebody just left their trash can out here, but I think that that's somebody's seat. I think it was somebody sitting under this limb, because that provides a lot of cover back there to the woods. Somebody sitting on that upside down trash can watching this field behind me. So that's something to keep an eye out for when you're scouting public land. Look for sign of other hunters. So I haven't seen any boot prints or anything like that, so I don't think people are out here frequently, but I know somebody else knows about this spot. Somebody else is hunting this spot for a reason. So maybe they know there's something out here. Maybe they have no idea and it just is a spot that looked good. But now I know that there's probably other people who have been out here. Whether it's frequent or not, don't really know that, but it's public, so it's not my own spot, but it's good to know where people are going and where they're not. So as I'm wandering around this property, I'm trying to also keep an eye on what do the trees look like. So I can see around me that these are mostly oaks, black oaks, post oaks. There's probably some white oaks mixed in there. Of course, there's some cedars, some other junk trees, bodark, stuff like that, but it's mostly oaks. So that's good in that I would put money on the fact that the deer are gonna be eating acorns here primarily all winter and all fall. So that's good in that there's an ample food supply. It's bad in that it's not a very specific location. It's not like a food plot or an agricultural area where you know deer are going to one spot to get food. They can wander through here and eat wherever they want. So my hunting strategy is gonna revolve more around trails and funnels than on a specific food spot, because they can eat kind of wherever. I'm also looking at the size and scale of the trees. So there's a fair number of decent sized oaks in here, but these aren't tall straight red oaks. These are post oaks and black oaks, so they're a bit scraggly, not super straight. So I'm sure I could wander around and find trees that would be good for my climber, but I think something like a hang-on stand is going to be a better option. Now at this point I'm not looking for a specific tree to hang on. I'll do that when we get way closer to season. I'm just looking at general ideas for how I would hunt this place. I also don't think I would use a ground blind here, just because I know that this grass, it's fairly tall right now, and in the fall it's going to be even thicker and taller. And there's a whole bunch of greenbrier back in these woods too. And that's great for cover for the deer. As much as we hate walking through that stuff, deer love hiding and bedding in that stuff, but it just means it's going to be really thick and hard to see from ground level. So if I can get up, not super high, but just, you know, 12-15 feet in a tree, that's going to be a huge advantage over being on the ground. So as you scout, as you walk around, just keep in mind the trees that are around you, because it'll give you some ideas for how to hunt the place, what the deer are eating, and kind of how they're using the property. So I've been tromping around in the woods for a little while here, and as you can see behind me, it is just super thick with briars. I've been getting torn up a little bit on my legs through all these briars. Super thick, but that means good cover for deer. But it also means this fall, that's gonna be miserable how thick it is. But what I just found is this little creek bed. Now it's not big, it's dry right now, there's no water in it. The mud's a little bit wet when I squish it, but that means there's occasionally water in here, so this may be where deer are getting water. But even more importantly, it means this is a natural travel corridor. So deer can be bedded in all this thick stuff and then escape out through this creek. So that gives me some ideas for how I'm gonna travel through this property. I can use the same creek, but then also maybe ways to get back into this wood section that are a little bit easier than tromping through all that bedding area and tearing it all up. It also may be beneficial just to sit somewhere where I can look at the creek and just see if anything's walking down the creek bed as a trail. So look for creeks like that. Even if they're totally dry, you can learn something from it. When you see trails this heavy, you gotta follow them, even if it looks like it's just out in the middle of an open field. They're basically telling you where the deer are going. Now, out in this field, with all these white oaks out here and then thicker stuff back there, I think this is almost exactly a bed to food, food to bed pattern. So just follow these trails, they'll tell you what to do. So I was following this one, and then look what I found. So some more fur, and then some bones. So that's a shoulder. So this is probably that's fairly fresh looking. So it looks like a fawn, maybe that was a coyote kill or something like that. But seeing deer remains like that aren't necessarily a bad thing, especially when it's in an area like this that could hold a whole lot of deer. It means you're actually in the right spot. It means you're in the area where deer are traveling, where they're going, and look at this trail. I mean, this is how you know when you find a travel route. To those of you who made it this far in the video, thanks for watching. I hope you found this interesting. I know it was mostly just kind of me rambling as I walked around the woods, but I wanted to take this opportunity to do some postseason scouting, and hopefully you can do the same. You can get out in the woods near you, find some spots, find where the deer go to when they're pressured, and kind of get a leg up on next year. So hope you found this interesting. Hope it gives you some ideas, things to look for in terms of terrain, trees, deer sign, all that stuff. Till next time, stay safe, be free, and never stop seeking adventure.